This is the Chasing Tomorrow podcast with Joe Gagnon. We bring you captivating conversations that will inspire all of us to go after our own version of a high-performance life. Welcome to Tomorrow Podcast. It's your two favorite people, Sean and Joe. I love these episodes, Sean. It's so fun to get caught up on the extravagance of your life or the lack thereof, all the things you have going on, the challenges you take on, people you meet. We're going to talk about that, the sort of what's next for your location and destination, and how are you crafting and creating, because every time I talk to you, I get energized about life. And so I'm excited to dig in today. How are you feeling after your marathon?
I'm actually not feeling good. My spirits are good, but I was a little humbled during this marathon. We're training for ultra, right? And I have an ultra marathon this weekend. And I thought I don't like to taper very long, 5 or 6 days. So I thought one last weekend was some good back to back where I went a little too hard on Saturday, and it was a really rough race for me on Sunday, but I think it helped. I told myself, I came here to finish, so I'm going to finish, right? Because you get every excuse. I was like, you know what? I should not finish because I have this bigger goal next week, and I should save up for that. But then I realized, like, I showed up to finish. So even if it cost me next week, I was going to finish. I don't believe in making decisions in the moment when the emotions are high. So, but yeah, just trying to take walks, stretch, yoga, keep lifting, sauna, doing everything I can to try to get the body back.
Road marathons do beat you up a little bit. The concrete is very different than the trail that as you were going along.
Yeah, and just the same step, just over and over.
Yeah, so one of the things that I continue to figure out, and this isn't a good figuring out, is that how we prep, especially around nutrition, does have such a big impact. And I went on a trip just recently, and it was a Sunday and middle day flight, and got out to where I was going and didn't get to really eat that much and didn't have really much of a dinner. And then when I went out and ran the next morning, you just felt the drag, like you were pulling yourself around. You didn't have any flow. And then so I consciously decided that day I should eat a lot more. Okay, how much could I possibly eat before I felt like it was going to explode? I don't know if it was a lot or a little, but it felt that it was a lot. Then the next morning I went for a run and it was just so much easier. So our bodies at this level of activity need sort of high octane or full tanks, whatever it is, so that once we turn on the switch, it has something to pull from. So I'm sure that
Yeah.
it was a combination of all that got in the way. But proven, if there's anyone out there listening, you could just try this yourself sometime. Plan a big activity and then don't eat much the day before and then see how it feels. And you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, I like rice, a little bit of green vegetables, chicken with like mustard or like barbecue sauce. Like that's what I like to eat before a race. Something pretty plain, maybe. And I really don't care. Before like High Rocks, I did like pasta. Like we went out and I did like chicken parmesan, and I just didn't eat that much of the cheese. It was already fried, right? So I kind of wiped the cheese off, but just try to keep it lean, and was kind of just, I don't want to say like arrogant because that's not the right word. I was just kind of like laissez-faire about it. Just kind of like, Emma's, I want Thai food. I was like, yeah, we'll eat some spicy, spiced up curry like the night before, and just didn't really think about it. And like I said, I ran hard the day before, which I think is great, but didn't really focus on recovery. Like right when we finished, I just kind of like laid down and like I felt myself getting stiff, and it's a good reminder that I actually don't think there's anything. I don't think you can overtrain. I think you just under recover. I don't think it's possible to overtrain. And I say that kind of in an annoying way because, of course, you need time to recover. For example, like if you're going to do 100 miles, well, then you need to sleep 10 or 11 hours for the next several days and spend several hours a day doing yoga and stuff. So obviously you can't just always be running, right? Eventually, from a time standpoint,
Yep.
you'll run out, and then, but yeah, it was just really good kind of like grounding feeling after. I got to shout out Dom Fusco, but Dom is a buddy of mine who he's big on Instagram, and he put out, I'm going to spend this whole year training to get a sub 3 hour marathon. And he picked the marathon. And he was already a good runner, training. It came, everyone's hyping him up on Instagram, and he didn't get it. and he posted after, and he said, "My goal in 2024, because this was last year, is to have more failures." Because in that time, he became a better runner. He learned more about the body. He got learned more about discipline and stuff like that. And yeah, it's if you're not failing, you're certainly not setting the bar high enough. I would say
Mm.
that.
Yeah, it's an interesting word. I don't know. We made it up, I guess, in humanity for the heck of it. I think sometimes the way we describe can create some antagonism, though. That failure, we don't want to just euphemistically say that performance, but is good or bad. We're trying to live. And if you're trying to figure out how the resources work in your body, then he was doing a good job of figuring that out. That learning is a process of neurons connecting. The neurons weren't there before. Was that failure because the neurons weren't there connecting? The muscle fibers weren't there before. The mitochondria, the red blood cells. So I think what the point is for me, this system adapts to stress very well, all kinds of stress, because that's what evolution has allowed us to do, to evolve. And so, through each of these opportunities, any of them where you push into the stress system, which means that it needs to respond. Oh, I need more neurons, more mitochondria, more red blood cells, more muscle fibers, whatever it might be, more emotional strength, however that would be measured. Then that's how to live, because then you're maximizing your potential over time. And so we could throw out the word failure as described by society as a negative system into a, if you use this system well, it actually does a lot more than you think it can. So why don't we go do that?
Thanks for breaking it down like that. And I definitely agree with you, like the way that you're thinking about the word failure. I remember once I was running in Bend, Oregon, this exactly 3.1 mile loop. And I was, you know what, let me try to go run my fastest 5K. And I was running, and about a mile in, I mean, I was just tired, legs tired, panting. And I remember sometimes you're up here, sometimes you're here. And I remember I'm tired. I said that. And then I just said, I don't know what prompted this. I said, what does tired mean? I just didn't feel like a good description. I started like to do, well, it has to be a relative word, right? It has to be, it's not a fact. Like it's not black and white, right? It's like tired is up to your interpretation. Now, it's also, I mean, of course, a made up word. Every word's made up, right? So it's subjective and it's made up. And I was, why do we even use it? And we kind of use it to like protect our ego, is what I got down to, and also maybe relate to some other people. And so I started running, and and there's a guy, Mo Gaudet. He wrote a book called The Happiness Equation. Really funny. He was the CEO of Google X. So engineer brain, and that's why he wrote this funny title, right? The Happiness Equation. Most people don't think you can engineer your way to happiness, and that was his whole point, was I want to try that, right? Just as an experiment. And he said it's very important that you speak to yourself objectively. And he goes, it's boring, but you have to have your inner talk be only fact. And I was reading the book at the time, so I said, well, I have pressure in my legs, right? That is a fact, right? Pressure. Not my legs hurt, not they're
Mhm.
tired. I feel increased pressure. And I said, what's the other thing? And I'm breathing hard. I was, well, hard's like tired. That's again a judgment. I said, my breathing is faster and than usual, right? And deeper. So those are the two things I had. And then I started realizing, when else do I have like pressure in my legs, and am I breathing fast or focused on my breathing? And I was thinking about like other workouts or meditations or breath work. And all those things kind of sharpen my awareness. When I do like this high intensity breath work, you're focused. So I realized this thing I called tired was actually pressure in my legs, breathing heavy. That actually sharpens my awareness, brings me in the moment. And I was, wait, those are good things. This is a superpower. And it completely changed like the shift in my brain. And then it relates to performance, because I got my fastest 5K ever. And I actually don't think I was in the best 5K shape of my life. And I think that's just how important kind of the mindset is.
Yeah, mindset can overcome a lot. Sometimes can't overcome a hematocrit level that's 40 versus one that's 49. But there are some data that would tell us what's possible, but we can always increase and get better. I know in the prep, Sean, you were talking a little bit about you and Emma are doing a little more networking, getting to meet some cool and interesting people. You had some good questions posed to you. Tell a little bit about what that experience has been.
Yeah, you kind of inspired that. I'll be honest with you. couple things that you're talking about that of course now you're not, but you're almost always branded in one up gear.
Right.
And that's a good conversation starter. You're a very busy person, right? I say that in a good way. Usually I say busy in a bad way. You have a lot of fun things you're focusing on, your family, your business, personal goals, writing, and you still make time to fly out and go to these networking events. I was all right, well, if Joe's doing it, why? He does most of his things pretty intentionally. And I just realized how important networking is. So, and saying yeses, right? Like, we got invited to a shakeout run before the marathon. Yes, we'll go. There was 800 people there that are all marathon runners. We met some cool people, as you could imagine. But even just walking in town, me and Emma have been trying to say hi to as many people as we can and chat with them, whether it's just a quick compliment and we keep going. And we end up sitting down and talking to these people. I mean, we're in a nice area, San Clemente, California, which is nice because you also get to be around people that are potentially, where you might want to be in life, right? And we found a couple in their 60s, good looking couple, happy couple, like genuinely seemed very wealthy, like just seemed, they were very complete. And it was funny. In the conversation, the woman asked me, this was on May 1st. She goes, Sean, it all worked out. It's May 1st, 2027. Tell me about what your life looks like. And I was kind of set back, like in a good way. Most people don't ask that. And she wouldn't settle. I started telling her, I think we have like a house that is, and she's aware, you know. And I think there's a farm. What's on the farm? Why do you have the farm? Do you tend to it every day? Does someone else tend to it? Are you eating from it? Are you selling? Like, she wanted to know the details. And she goes, this is just one of your dreams. This doesn't have to be the dream, but whether it's the dream or just one of them, I need details. And we started going through, and she goes, awesome, awesome. We went through that whole exercise, and she goes, now I need you to dream much bigger. And she goes, I can help with that. She goes, you have $50 billion. How are you going to spend that all in 1 year? And I don't think shoes, clothes, like cars, you can't just spend $50 billion. Houses, you can't just spend $50 billion. You need to. She was. Are you going to try to like cure hunger in Africa? Right? Are you like $50 billion? We're talking like serious money. Are you going to try to get people to Mars? What are you trying to do? And the whole exercise was to think at that level, because you're not going to magnetize. You're not going to live at that level if you don't think at that level. And I was just enamored with it. Me and Emma have been having some talks and some journal practices together just about how we'd spend $50 billion. What life should we want, or what's that one day look like in 3 years? Stuff like that.
Yeah, well, you clearly met some interesting people when that happens, because most people actually, it's not that there aren't people who are interesting. They're usually not interested in you. So you found
Yeah.
some who was interested in you, which I really, and they were going to help you do some thinking. Hey guys, Joe Gagnon, host of the Chasing Tomorrow podcast, and this episode is brought to you by OneUp Health. OneUp Health is a modern cloud data and interoperability platform that makes it easy to acquire, store, and share data between payers, providers, and patients. I hope you enjoy the episode. I think that the intrigue on some of that is, well, maybe you don't go to 50 billion, but you do think about what impact you could have. And I recently was in an event, and the theme was early in your life, you learn, in the middle of your life, you earn, and in the end of your life, you return. And if you can orient yourselves in that way, then we would create a holistic system where we are each taking care of each other and the planet, because we are giving back. And if someone did accumulate a lot during that period of time, purpose of having accumulated it is to return it in the best way possible. And so whatever way you would spend that is the return part at any point. It doesn't have to be over 60. Just is, hey, look, I've gone through this path. Now my purpose is to return. And I think that starting to think about that earlier in your life, so you could set up even just the coaching that you could do for people is returning from the experience you've gained from all the activities you've taken on. And I think that mindset gets triggered when you hang out with sort of, we'll call it, people who aren't trying to prove themselves anymore because they've gone through the first two stages. And then the thing we want to stay away from is those who got to learn and earn and just only want to earn and not return. The truth of the matter is, at some point, it's going to leave you. So you might as well do something actively with it when you have the chance to have impact on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's Joe. It's funny, like synchronicities just line up sometimes. And the reason I say that is I once was asked, what do I think the purpose in life is? And I think it's like gathering wisdom through experiences, learning, conversations, whatever, and then sharing it as deeply with as many people as possible. And I know it's a pretty vague answer, so I'm working on that answer, but it's kind of along that line. I feel like it's almost like that's almost like connecting us, right? As you're the learner, there has to be a teacher. And that's like
Mhm.
connecting humanity, generations, kind of like our cross multi-generational friendship. And then like it passes through, I guess it's almost more like a conveyor belt, I guess,
Yeah, that's what happens, and I think that the other part people talk about longevity or health span recently more and more, but one of the ways to improve both of those, live longer and live healthier, is through this sort of connectedness in the community, in your world, where we have purpose in helping the next generation continue to improve and maybe shorten the path to some of the impact that could be had. Everyone doesn't have to struggle in the same way. We can share that and in that make it a better world. I think we've talked about this before. This isn't a world of scarcity. This is a world of abundance. Now, sometimes what that abundance is gets selfish, but if abundance is actually shared, then we don't have a problem of availability of whether it's food or anything else in the world. It's actually just not equally distributed. So if we could build a system that says, yes, there are a few people who end up with a lot, but they end up with a lot and then they give it back a lot, then it'll work. Because I don't know that the system works if we're just trying to equalize everyone throughout. The only thing that matters is that you don't end up hoarding it all at the end.
Yeah, it's a very good point because I agree. I mean, that's like kind of communism, right? To try to make it like perfect, like everything completely even. And there's not even capabilities, there's not even interest. And ultimately, I think there's a deep scarcity mindset that you're kind of like referencing, and that's what drives a lot of our issues, right? Is that people are acting out of fear and scarcity. And it manifests in potentially hoarding or being insecure. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because acting in scarcity almost like attracts scarcity as well. So it's but and I get it. It's hard, right? Like we all kind of like consume as much as we make, and we're taught to consume more and more and more, and are from like a materialist standpoint, you adapt to your like current setting, right? Where you're okay, I have this nice of a house now. I always need this nice of a house. Like anything else, like you kind of like look back on, which I don't know, where does that come from? Is that like our ego? Is that
Oh, I think no. I think it's a lot to do with this idea that if you believe that there's scarcity, back to the hunter gatherer, then you would gather as much as you possibly could because you don't know where the next is coming from. I think it's innate in us that we like to assemble as much as possible to it doesn't really exist anymore, but the idea of a famine that could happen. And we have then translated that into material goods like cars and houses and other objects that aren't actually the same as nutritional needs. But I think it just follows the same path, which is there seems to be no end to our belief that we need more to protect our own personal interests. And there is nothing systemic in society that says, well, that should be shared. So we need to develop that better. I mean, there are people, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, who've decided to give the majority of their fortunes, away, which is great. But I think that the goal of getting more is to give away more. If that is indeed, we can't change the first. If that's innate, then we just have to develop the second strength, which is okay. The reason why I want to build more and have more is so I can give back more and just do it in a thoughtful way. And maybe we're starting to move in that direction. I've seen at least more people interested in that, but not everyone. So we have some work to do.
Yeah, yeah. That's if I was speaking honestly, that's my goal. It's also a fear that I make a lot of decisions to make sure I have resources and honestly like ability, power to make these decisions, like make impact in the future. And sometimes guilt can creep up if you feel like you have more than others, whether it's loved ones or, especially if I'm walking around inner cities and see homeless people, I'm just, man, I feel guilty. Like, I feel guilty even going out for dinner when I ate 3 hours ago, right? Like, I should just go give them something. But honestly, the way that I've tried to live my life, Joe, is that right now, I don't know if I have the wisdom or the resources to make the impact I want to. So I'm trying to accumulate the wisdom and accumulate the resources and make a big splash kind of later in my life when I feel, I guess, more drawn to and more capable of it. And I have had some fear that along the journey guilt gets the best of me. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
not guilt, that like scarcity a little bit, but more like that I don't end up giving it back, that I
I
end up.
think that yeah, I don't know if you'll become a selfish guy just because you have more. It doesn't have to be if you define the purpose back to the learn, earn, return model. Your purpose to learn and earn is so you can return. If you keep reminding yourself that that's your purpose, then you'll never become a selfish person. Even if during some period of time in there, it might look that because you're accumulating, but you're accumulating for the purpose of giving back. That is different than just for your own self interest. And I think that that's a good theme for all of us to embrace, which is that yeah, there's a point. Maybe you'd have children, you want to take care of them. That's fair. It's a good thing to actually earn so that you can take care of them. But there are points when we can all give back, and it doesn't always have to be just having accumulated wealth. Giving back is volunteering, it's helping out in the community, it's sharing what you've learned with other people, making them more powerful, it's supporting and being there for them. So the return can happen throughout. It's a good muscle to develop. And I always felt that you particularly care about that. So I don't worry about the risk factor here. It just might be a little bit of a blip every once in a while, but the roots are deeper than a weak wind will blow down here, is my
I
opinion.
appreciate that. I appreciate your faith. I feel like that's a kind of a great place to wrap it up, Joe. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think so. And well, good luck on your big ultra. We'll hear about that soon. And,
how's training for the bike ride going?
getting better. I'm getting some more miles in, feeling better on the bike. So I'm
What do you do
looking
on the
forward.
on a long bike ride? Just zone out, listen to music, podcasts.
Yeah, mostly just appreciate the outside because you get to move a little faster, see a little more. Different than running, where you do get some downhills, which is fun in biking. So you can really enjoy a little bit of a break. There's no breaks in running. But
Yeah,
well, we'll have a lot to talk
yeah.
about when we catch up here soon, Sean. Thanks very much. And let's go chase tomorrow, everyone.
Let's do it.